Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel, That Boxing Writer. Join in the conversation, make sure to leave some comments, and most importantly, make sure to like the videos, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification button. Enjoy the show, and thank you for watching. Hello, fight fans. I'm That Boxing Writer, Jeremy Harridges, and welcome. You are in the right place. If things don't look quite the same, I've had a bit of a facelift for the YouTube channel. If you notice the new banner, the new logo, I hope you guys like it. Thank you for those that have offered positive feedback on it. Gotten a ton of great feedback on it, actually. So, I just felt things were a little bit stale with the old banner. It's a logo that I've had for ages, and I just felt like it needed a bit of an update. So finally, I got a logo that I think is a little bit more me and should be sticking around for a while. So here you are on my channel, That Boxing Writer. Well, a few things. First of all, we're going to be taking a look back at the amazing fight card that was on Showtime this last weekend. It was the Saturday, July 17th Showtime card featuring Jermell Charlo versus Brian Castaño. We'll be talking about that one, breaking it down, and of course the big question that's highlighted on the thumbnail that everybody's been talking about: was it a robbery? Now, looking at that, was it a robbery? I'll answer that question. That's the big question. I'll get to that at the end. But I want to just say a few things about a couple of the other bouts that were on that card. Now, if you go back to my fight preview for the fight, we did pretty well. I said that Vidal was going to win by decision. I said that Rolly Romero was going to knock out Anthony Yiggett in round 7. I called round 7, I believe. Go back, watch it. I think I was kind of like between round 7 and 8, but I said, all right, I'm going to stick with round 7. Sure enough, he landed he landed several punches, but he finished the show in impressive fashion. Wasn't making the fans too happy in that one. His surly confidence, if you want to call it that, demeanor, and his roughhouse tactics didn't rub the San Antonio crowd the right way, but he knocked Yiggett down 3 times, came away with a big win, calling out Gervonta Davis. As you guys saw, he did that on our show, but I'm telling you, I don't think that fight gets made. Remember, they're both Mayweather promotion guys. I have a feeling that they're going to go in a different route, that they don't want to see 2 of their main attractions, obviously their number 1 main attraction being Gervonta. They don't want to see those guys take O's or damage each other. Even though they want to keep it in-house, I think Mayweather meant that comment in terms of PBC in-house. I don't think he meant in-house in terms of his own promotional company. I don't think he wants to sacrifice either of their perfect records for that matchup. So I have a feeling that Rolly's going to be put in there with someone else. We'll see who it ends up being. I like the Jorge Linares fight. The background there that he shared with us, I thought was pretty fantastic. So I would love to see a Rolly versus Jorge Linares fight. I don't know. Will we get it? We'll see. Linares is a Golden Boy guy, so that might be tough to make. That's not an in-house fight. But again, the in-house comment was only for Gervonta Davis, wasn't necessarily for Rolly Romero. So we'll see how things play out there. And then, of course, we had the draw between Charlo and Castaño. I said Castaño was going to win. Many people out there agree that he should have won. If you look at the Showtime broadcast, they had a graphic or some sort of poll that came up at the end of the show. And 79% of viewers thought that Castaño did enough to win that fight. I believe, I can't remember his final card, but I'm pretty positive that Showtime's own Steve Farhood had Castaño winning by 2 points, if I'm correct. So go back and check that out. But I believe he had him winning by two rounds, I should say. So he had him winning by 2 rounds. We'll talk about that one. As far as the predictions go, we almost batted 1,000. I mean, really, the only thing that held us back was the Charlo Castaño ending, which a draw is about as close as you can get without getting the win. But the Vidal fight, Vidal versus Aleem, that's one that I shouldn't have gotten right. In all fairness, as much as I predicted Vidal to win by decision, watching that fight, it was clear as day to me that Emmanuel Aleem won that fight. I wrote it up on fansided.com/boxing. I called it a heartbreaker because Aleem did a fantastic job working with Ronnie Shields. You saw the differences in his boxing in that fight, and I thought Aleem won it. I didn't score the fight. I was sitting there writing, and I'll talk about the difficulties of scoring while writing at the same time. And so I never score the fights live. You know, I'm working on my recaps or my highlights for Fansided, but I didn't need to rewatch it. I know based on what I saw that Aleem won that fight by multiple rounds. There was no question about that to me. So if we're talking about robberies, the one person to me that got robbed that night was Emmanuel Aleem. I mean, if we're talking about bad judges and bad scoring, let's take a look at the two 97-93 cards against Aleem. 97-93, Vidal was barely letting his hands go. I'm not saying he didn't land punches of substance, but Aleem was bullying him around even at the end of the fight. While we're waiting for Vidal to come on, he was getting outworked by Aleem and getting pushed around by the much smaller fighter. So I don't know how two guys came up with 97-93. To me, that's the real shame in all of this. So shout out to Emmanuel Aleem, man. You won that fight in my book and a lot of others. 97-93 times 2. That's really awful. There's a reason why we have 3 judges. That way, if there's a bad card, hopefully it gets outweighed by the other 2. That didn't happen in that fight. And I think that's really the fight that we should be looking at when we talk about bad judging, and particularly within Texas. Texas has a reputation for having bad judging. Now, everyone will point out, well, the judges aren't from Texas. No, they're not. But the referees that are selected by the Texas Athletic Commission. So the Texas Athletic Commission decides who's going to referee all their fights. And if you go over the history of who they've selected, they haven't done a very good job. So that's why you have to blame it on the commission. You're selecting particular judges that have had some bad track records here. Those 97-93 cards by, let's name them out here, Ruben Carrion and Rick Crocker, that's gonna haunt them. Now, this fight isn't getting the attention because they're not big names like Charlo, like Castaño, but those are the guys that should really be getting, the attention in all this, and the Athletic Commission. Again, not necessarily from Texas, but Texas is selecting them. So whatever they're doing, I mean, this has been going wrong for a long time. And again, this goes back decades that Texas has had issues with the ultimate scoring of fights. So I wanted to give Aleem his props on that one. Now let's talk about the fight that you guys all came here for. Yesterday, I wanted to take 24 hours break from the fights. I just wanted to clear my mind, hang out with my kids, enjoy the Sunday, did a little bit of yard work. Still one arm, but I'm out of the sling for this video. I'm still in it for the next 5 weeks and counting. So I'm not 100%, but I can use my arm sparingly. Plus, it screws up the shot, so no sling for this one. Yeah, still on the mend with that. So I was having a Sunday to myself away from boxing. Woke up this morning, had the house to myself for the first time in Lord knows how long. And I just sipped on some coffee, busted out the computer, went to my DVR and YouTube TV, and rewatched the fight intently to score it. Here's the thing. When I'm writing and doing recaps and highlights for Fansided, I don't like doing live scoring. My attention is on the fight, obviously, but I'm also thinking in 5,000 other areas. I'm thinking about headlines. I'm thinking about titles. I'm thinking about word choice for the articles that I'm writing. I'm taking notes, all that sort of thing. And occasionally when I look down at the computer or I'm typing, I may miss something. So having the intent of judging, that's got to be your sole focus if you really want to do it well. So I don't like to score fights while I'm watching them. So today, early in the morning, over breakfast, after breakfast, I didn't want any distractions. I intently watched the fight, and my answer is no. This wasn't a robbery. I know a lot of people thought Castaño won the fight, and when I watched it live, I thought the same thing. Here's the thing when you're watching it live. First of all, you've got a lot of senses that are working. As far as your hearing goes, you're hearing the audience, you're hearing the commentators, right? All of that's kind of being built in. And even if you don't think it's biasing you in any sort of way, subliminally it might. So there is something to be said about that. The other thing with that, just watching it live, you have these momentum shifts. And sometimes the momentum shifts in one fighter's way a little bit more than others. But again, that doesn't necessarily happen round by round by round. We have to remember how we're scoring this thing. We're scoring it on the round. Who wins the round? Who loses the round? It's not about who has the best moment or moments round by round. So it gets a little bit tricky. So I would agree, having watched it live, I thought Castaño won the fight. Not by a lot, but I thought he won the fight. Watching it today on my rewatch and scoring it, my card came out 114 to 114. So I do not call this a robbery. And plus, when a fight's this close, that word robbery, I mean, it becomes hyperbole at that point. And I get it. There was a terrible scorecard from Nelson Vasquez, who's been deservedly so raked over the coals right now for the 117-111 for Charlo. I mean, that's awful. That's a terrible score. But as I said previously, there's a reason why we have 3 judges. It's a subjective art. It's not objective. It's subjective. As much as we want to say it should be objective, the judge is basing it on their opinion, what their criteria is. And you can give bullet points to a judge and say, you all follow the same criteria. It doesn't quite work out that way. What I see as ring generalship, or how much importance I put on that, might be more than just output. Some guys like to really see the fighter that's more aggressive and they give them the edge automatically. Other people see it more scientifically where, hey, I like the counter puncher. So everybody's got a subjective viewpoint. Judging is subjective. It's an evaluation made through the eyes of the evaluator. So that's why we have 3 judges, to try to knock out some of that bias or some of that subjectivity. And in this case, I thought the 3 judging system did its job here. Case in point, you had a 114 by Tim Cheatham. You had Weisfeld scoring at 114, 113 for Castaño. Both good scores. And then if you had Vasquez scoring at 114, 113 for Charlo, I don't think we'd be mentioning his name. I don't think we'd be saying, oh my God, what a terrible score. What a robbery. If it was close, we'd be saying, yeah, it's a close fight. Let's do it again. And you would never hear his name. It's the 117-111 that's shocking people. And I get it. Be shocked. It's a bad score. But that's what we get in boxing. That's what you get with subjectivity. It's never going to be a perfect science when you have the subjective in there. And it's always going to be that way. And there's no real way to eliminate it, unfortunately. Can you penalize judges for terrible scorecards? Sure. Maybe there should be a review board that reviews really, really, really bad scorecards and says, you know what? We had 10 different judges that all viewed this fight. Nobody could see how you humanly possibly came up with this subjective viewpoint. You're suspended for 6 months. Well, there you go. And then don't assign that judge to other big, major, undisputed fights. This was for the junior middleweight title. Undisputed. If he's got a bad track record, don't assign him to it. Athletic Commission, Texas, right? That's where I'm talking about what can we do to try to clean this up a little bit. So there's a solution, but it starts with the Athletic Commission. Just saying. With all that said, the one score to me isn't the major talking point here. The system, the 3-judge system, did its job, and it came out a draw. It worked much better in this fight than it did for Vidal versus Aleem. Okay, so I'm going to give them their credit for, not the judges their credit, but the system the credit for working. I thought it was a draw as well. Watching it, or rewatching it with my full attention, eyes glued, no distractions, sound off. Okay. So yeah, I scored at 114, 114. Now that wasn't an easy score to come by. There were a couple rounds that I had some trouble with, no doubt about it. And the rounds to me that were troubling were rounds 3 and 6, where there wasn't a whole lot of activity. And you say, well, I got to give this to somebody. Who do I give it to? And in those rounds, I thought Charlo controlled the round for the majority of the round. Each time Castaño came back at the end, had a little good flurry, particularly in round 3, where he was really starting to recover from round 2 and build up that momentum into round 4, which was a fantastic round for him. But I still, looking at that round 3, gave it to Charlo. And looking at the punch count, it wasn't a very dynamic round. It was pretty even-keeled until the last section. So I had a problem. Do I give Castaño the round because he put in a really good final 20 seconds? Or do I give it to Charlo because he controlled the ring and controlled everything that was happening, the ring generalship, for 2/3 of the round? And that's where I was really, more than 2/3 of the round. That's where I was really having a tug of war with my brain and how do I score that round? Now, if you look at the CompuBox numbers, Charlo landed 5 punches to Castaño's 11. And remember, we're not scoring based on the number of punches landed. The majority of those punches landed within the last 20 to 25 seconds for Castaño. He wasn't really doing anything for the first 2 minutes or so. So I think that's something that we have to recognize as well. In round 6, Castaño again still had the edge in punches landed. It was closer that time, 12-16, and we're talking about a difference of 4 punches there. And again, the majority of the round, I liked the ring generalship of Charlo more than Castaño. So those are 2 rounds that were problematic. I scored them for Charlo. Steve Farhood scored them for Castaño. So right there, those 2 rounds that where not a lot was going on, and a flurry at the end for Castaño gave him the round on some other people's scorecards. That's a matter of subjectivity. How do you judge, right? And that's where I gave those rounds to Charlo, and that's why I gave them to Charlo. He controlled the action for 2/3 of the round. In both of those instances, to me, he won them. But again, came down to an even scorecard for me, even having given him those 2 swing rounds. It was still 114, 114. Don't give it to him, then you end up scoring 2+ rounds for Castaño, and he wins. It was that close. So if you're going to give the edge to someone, Castaño definitely, I think, fought the better fight. But if I'm scoring based on the rules of boxing and round by round, I still had it a draw. For anyone that says that this wasn't a close fight, again, the punch stats don't tell the whole story, nor should we rely entirely on punch stats to decide who a winner and who a loser is. However, it's a metric that can help us. And the metric tells us in this case, it was a close fight. Total punches thrown. Let's just go total punches thrown. Charlo threw 533 punches, Castaño 586. That's close. Now you could say, wait a second, it's not that close. In a boxing bout over 12 rounds, that's close. That's not like a landslide. So Castaño threw more punches, but we already knew that he was probably going to throw more punches if he didn't get knocked out, which he almost did on a couple occasions. Particularly that round 2, he was really hurt. And again, in round 10, really hurt. Not saying he didn't hurt Charlo, but Charlo never looked as bad as he did in those 2 instances. 2 instances don't decide a fight. But those are close numbers. That shows us that these numbers were tight. We're used to seeing Castaño throw 1,000+ punches. I thought that Castaño would win because even if you halved his punches, he's going to be right in there, right in the fight. He did kind of half his output, and it was still a draw. Castaño, I thought, needed to be more in the 700 punch count if he wanted a chance to win this thing. Charlo did about what I expected him to do. 533 over his last few fights. That's about right. He's right in there, right between 5 and 600. He's never gotten to 600 as far as I know in the last 3 fights. That's that 500 to mid 500 point or lower 500 point. That's where we typically see Charlo. Now, if we go to punches landed, the difference here in the punch stats, you had Castaño landing 173 to Charlo's 151 punches. That's a 22 punch difference. 22 punches in a 12-round fight, that's nothing. Nothing. That's a close fight. If you're coming within 20 to 22 punches and that's the only difference landed, that's a close fight. So again, these are stats where they're close. Even the punch connect, the accuracy in total punches, 29.5% for Castaño, 28.3% for Charlo. Again, basically within a percentage point, that's close. All of the stats are close because the fight was close. And it makes sense that a draw came out. So yeah, after, taking my time and scoring it, I scored it a draw. It wasn't a robbery. Yes, the 117, 111 score is ridiculous, but don't lose yourself in that. The scoring, the judges, the system did its job. It determined that this fight was close and it ended as a draw. Nobody got robbed. If Castaño lost, yes, then I would say it was a robbery because a draw was the perfect outcome. Either he was going to have a draw or he was going to win by 1 or 2 rounds. I could not score it for Charlo under any circumstance. Even if I flipped those 2 swing rounds, I did flip them. I had those 2 swing rounds for Charlo. So that's why it ended up being the 114-114. Without those, he loses. And those were close rounds. So really, there was no mathematical way where I could see Charlo winning this fight. One mathematical way or 2 mathematical ways, either just giving him round 3 or just giving him round 6 or both, that he could win this fight. So yes, Castaño looked really good, but I thought a draw was fair based on the scoring that boxing employs. So 114-114 I thought was fair. I'd love to see this fight again. Love to see them do it again. But we'll see if that happens. Again, the politics of boxing tends to be a problem. So was it a robbery? I say no. What do you guys think? Leave me your comments. Was it a robbery to you? Make an argument. I want to hear from you guys. Let's have some dialogue. Other than that, I'll be hitting you guys up more this week with more content. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.